Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. Now, in this video, I want to try and answer the question, are Chelsea Football Club in trouble once again? And here to help me answer that question is my good friend Josh Aveste. The link to Josh's channel is in the description below. Josh, we were both at the game yesterday. Enjoy it?
I don't think I enjoyed many home games recently. And that was another one that I had to boo at the end. It was really, really bad. The boys need to know that they're not performing. And like to just have another game where we can't break a low block down, it's just not good enough. But look, it's not all doom and gloom, is it?
No, it's definitely not all doom and gloom. And I want to make sure that I get this across very early on in this video. This isn't going to be a massively negative video. Look, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, and that is underperformance from some of our players. And maybe the way we're setting up and whatever. But at the same time as that, I do think that there's genuine cause to be optimistic. And look, maybe I'm a glass half full mentality kind of man, yeah? But I do genuinely think that we will start to see better from this team. And in this video, we're going to tell you exactly why we think we'll start to see better from this team. And also, we're going to have a go at giving our starting 11s going forward. So I understand there's injuries and whatnot, but I personally, I don't know about you, Josh, I think that a formation change is probably needed, and I do think some of the personnel might need to be tweaked. So for what it's worth, I am going to give my starting 11 going forward, and obviously we will take into account some players are injured and whatnot, and you're going to give yours. Before we get into it, I know what you're all thinking. He looks good today, yeah? And you're sort of thinking, I wonder what it is. Is it like the whole tub of hair gel he's used? Is it the little moustache that's clinging on for dear life? And it's not. It's this kit. Kit Plug sorted me out of a couple of really, really nice Chelsea kits. So I'm also going to link them in the description because they do all old replica, retro kits, loads of ones. Can you think of your favourite Chelsea kit of all time?
Oh, God, that's so difficult, isn't it? Do you know the one that immediately springs to mind in terms of like an absolute classic that is like iconic? It was a yellow kit that we had in like the late 90s.
Autoglass.
Yeah, it was that like those yellow and blue short kits were some of my favourite away tops.
I feel like we don't see enough yellow Chelsea kits because when I think of Chelsea colours, for me, it's blue and yellow. Like, it's always blue and yellow.
Yeah.
If you're like my dad's generation, a lot of people think blue and red because obviously the old badge did have, you know, the lion was red, wasn't it? You can see behind you here. So Kit Plug, they're plugged and they're in the they're in the description to this video. Let's quickly, and we'll be quick with this, let's touch on yesterday's game. For me, again, a massive struggle in breaking down that low block. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. For me, when I looked at the team sheet from the start, the main issue was how defensive we set up. And look, it wasn't a surprise, was it? The team sheet. Like when we saw that, I was just like, right, Poch hasn't rolled the dice. He's felt that the team are playing well in the last few games. And he's just gone, right, I'll just stick with the team sheet that we have. But it's way too defensive, isn't it?
I think so. I think when you look at the attacking players we've got and you look at the talent we've got, especially further up the pitch, I think that there's a big debate amongst the Chelsea fan base at the minute, isn't there? Whether we're playing a 4 or whether we're playing a 3, which is actually a 5, you know, it's very confusing. One of the things that I did see yesterday is I actually agreed with you, what you had said to me before, is actually, if you look at it, it is a 4. It is a 4 when we're going forward and whatnot. And I do agree with that. It is a 4. But then it does massively beg the question, why on earth is Levi Colwill playing at left back? I'm not saying he's not capable, and I could upset a few here, but for me, at this moment in time, Axel Disasi is not where I want him to be as a starting Chelsea centre-back. And I feel like we know that Thiago Silva is going to be in that centre-back position, right? Some people would disagree on it. I'll be interested to know your thoughts on it. But I feel like that's a nailed-on one. So there's one more position up for grabs. And I don't see how Axel Disasi is starting there ahead of Levi Colwill. It needs to be Levi Colwill there, in my opinion. But yeah, very frustrating yesterday. I've read somewhere that we had 2 shots on target, but I don't remember having a shot on target, do you?
Well, the stats the stats don't lie, do they? But yeah, it obviously wasn't memorable enough for us to
I literally don't remember a shot on target.
But you then look at the XG numbers, and obviously people take the piss out of XG. I'm a big exponent of it. Like I believe that it portrays the value of how good like chances are, right?
So just quickly, right, before we go into this, and this is why I love having Josh on. Josh is the intelligent one out of us two. And that doesn't mean he's that intelligent, because you haven't got to be that intelligent to be the intelligent one out of us two, but I won't discredit you. Can you explain for viewers for viewers that don't know, can you explain what XG is?
Yeah, so it means expected goals. And effectively what it does is, imagine around the penalty area, there are points in the around there that have a higher chance of scoring a goal. So for example, if you're on the goal line and it's a tap in, it's very likely that it's going to go in, unless you're Nicholas Jackson. But let's get on to that in a second. And then obviously if you're shooting from 40 yards out, it's obviously less likely to go in. And then if there's a header, it's slightly more likely than a volley, for example. And so basically what someone has done, a boffin has done, is basically go, all of these chances are worth this amount of XG, expected goals, if all things were equal. And so the chances that we're having, if they're closer to the goal, they should be more likely to score. So what that then means is you get like a formula at the end of the game. And basically what you can do across a season is then predict how likely people are to score, win games. There's then expected points. Everything goes into it, right? So basically it's like a maths way of sort of like solving football. Brentford do it very well with the way they play. Brighton also use expected goals data for their scouting and that sort of thing. So basically like smart clubs are using data to drive it forward. But let's not go too far on the data. What the data did say though, was that we had 2 expected goals. That means that we were expected to score 2 goals in that game.
Which you would imagine was the block Sterling shot and the Jackson chance.
The Jackson miss.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so that they were probably 2 of the highest, but it also means that we had other opportunities as well to score. And the key thing for me is we're not taking those chances. Poch says after the game, we're not taking the chances. A lot of the other boys, Chilwell, for example, also said, look, we're getting in the right positions. We've just got to score goals. But you can't keep saying that. You've got to score them.
And also, I do think that definitely, in my opinion, applies to a lot of the performances we've seen. Well, there hasn't been a lot of games yet, but more or less all the performances we've seen, I would agree with that. I'd agree with it of West Ham, Liverpool, obviously Luton, we did well. I actually wouldn't agree with that yesterday. I didn't think that we got in massively threatening positions. I didn't think that we created much and, were unlucky. As I say, I can't remember a shot on target yesterday. What we do is we have a lot of possession and we play a lot of the football in the opposition's half. But yesterday, I didn't think, regardless of XG, I didn't think we were massively creative. And that's a point that we need to address, isn't it? What is going on with the creativity at Chelsea?
But then you think about it, like how many crosses did we have across the box? Like we had 3 good crosses that came straight across the box. And then that gets on to another point for me, like beyond just the creativity, right? It's also about getting bodies in and around the key areas of the pitch. So there's 2 areas I think we need to get more bodies in and around. One is the attacking area. A lot of people were slagging off Jackson yesterday, which I think is completely harsh. Like, fair enough, he missed a very, very good opportunity and he should have slotted that home. There's no way around that, right? But to say that he's the only problem in attack is a complete fallacy. We need to get people in and around him. Like, for example, Sterling needs to be there closer to him. The left winger, Chilwell, for example, needed to be close to him. And then also, we'll get into formations in a second, but I feel that there's got to be a midfielder that advances on. That's what we loved about Frank, right? Frank Lampard. He would get into the box, drive in, score goals. And basically, like, I almost want Gallagher to be that guy, right? Or another player instead of him. But I need someone supporting Jackson. Because basically what was happening is we'd get a ball from either wing, usually from the right, let's be honest. A ball would be whipped through. Jackson would be decoying the 2 defenders, the centre backs. He's obviously never really going to get it in that position unless he makes an unbelievable run. But then there's got to be someone to cut back to or someone that's got to be making another run. And we just weren't seeing that yesterday.
And it's not just Lampard. Obviously, that's a massively obvious example, isn't it? But we've always had players such as Mata, Oscar, the list does go on. We've always had players that can pop up with goals from midfield. Yeah. At the minute, we're struggling in attack and there's definitely no one in midfield. And I feel like even yesterday there was, I don't know whether this was from the manager, from the team, but definitely in the crowd, the atmosphere I picked up, there was quite a heavy reliance on Sterling to do something. And it does go to show, I could compare it to other teams. I don't think that Liverpool are massively reliant on Salah to do something. I don't think that Arsenal are massively reliant on Saka to do something. Saying that, that's each team's probably most important player and the player that is most likely to do something. But if they don't come there, someone else will chip in with a few goals. And that's really what we need. So I think that the first thing we need to say is that these things do happen, okay? We've not had a great start to the season. 1 draw, 2 losses, 1 win. You know, Newcastle haven't had a great start to the season. There's a few teams in there that haven't had the best start. However, when we look at our expectations for this season, if we're thinking, right, top 5 gets you Champions League football, it's very hard if we're sitting here being honest right now to say that there aren't 5 better teams in the league than us right now. If we go on personnel and the squad and everything, you might say, no, there's not. If you go on manager, you might say, no, there's not 5 better managers than Pochettino. But I think we'd be lying, wouldn't we, to say that there's not 5 teams in the league right now that are playing better football than Chelsea. So at the minute, it is starting to look already unlikely that we'll be up there when it comes to competing for Champions League football. But I would caveat that by saying if we go on a 3-match run of wins, all of a sudden the world's your oyster and it can change. So that's one thing that I myself want to be very careful of, is being overly critical of this team, because I know how a couple of weeks in football can change the outlook on everything, absolutely everything. You know, Arsenal had that awful start to the season before last where they lost their first 3 games, and then they came good and rocketed up the league and, you know, eventually bottled it. But it did change for a considerable amount of time. However, what I do think we need to change, in my opinion, is a change of formation. I'm just not feeling it. And the reason I'm just not feeling it is because, and you can throw at me, what does pre-season matter? I love the way we looked in pre-season. And let's not pretend in pre-season we were playing duds. You know, we played Newcastle, we played Brighton, we played Fulham, Dortmund, wasn't it? Right? We set up in a 4-2-3-1 in every single one of their matches, as far as I can remember, didn't we? Did you rate the way we looked in that 4-2-3-1, and would you like to see it come back? Or, I know you're an advocate of the 4-3-3.
Basically, the only thing that we're debating here isn't necessarily the shape per se. And there are 2 things to talk about, right? There's the left-hand side, which is playing a defender in defence and an attacker in attack, right? There's that side of it. And then there's whether you play a double pivot or a 3 midfield. For me, what I want to be seeing, and I think you're going to basically agree because we're very aligned here, is that I want to see a left back at left back, because we've got 3 quality left backs, let's say 2.5 quality left backs, right? And I want to see a left winger because we've got so much talent on the wings and also attacking impetus, people that can beat men, people that can get in the box and score goals, right? We've got a lot of ability there. And then I want to see 2 holding midfielders, right? I almost think this experiment of Enzo being this attacking player, I think for the time being, we need to say to him, look, maybe your time will come, but for the time being, for the team, you need to hold and come back with Caicedo and give him some support.
Because he was very far forward yesterday. You've noticed that.
Yeah.
He was just behind Jackson really a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I think it's a shame because we've been discussing this at length, right, about whether his ability is better suited in an attacking sense. And I do strongly feel, and I'm not backing down on this, I do strongly feel he is better when he's unlocked and allowed to go forward. But I think the team predicates him at the moment being the solid option sitting next to Caicedo. And also I think we'd benefit from having his passing range slightly deeper. So I think if we get bodies and solidity in the middle of midfield, I think that will allow us to then drop a centre-back. But until we do that, we're always going to be playing 3 centre-backs because Disasi is new to the league. Thiago Silva is ageing, and Colwill, again, is sort of getting used to his role in the Chelsea setup. All of those guys are getting used to playing together because they've never done it before. So I think unless we have 2 very strong centre mids, we're always going to play 3 centre backs. And when you're talking about a move to 4-2-3-1, I think there's a possibility that he drops Chilwell rather than Colwill. And I think we've got to prepare for that. Yeah, because in pre-season, we saw this. We saw basically Gusto was the one that was forming an effective centre-back. What he would do is rather than bombing on, because effectively when we've been watching Reece James has been the right back that then sort of like bombs straight on. And we're actually used to, as Chelsea fans, mainly because we've been playing a 5, seeing 2 very high wing backs, right? So we're kind of like expecting our wing backs to do that role. What I think Poch wants to do is more like bring Gusto or someone on the other side, like Colwill. So he's basically just flipped sides and gone, Colwill, you sit in and invert, and then Gusto can bomb on. And then if we play Chilwell as a left back, he might ask Gusto to sort of come in. So I think that's sort of why I'm expecting Colwill to maybe end up playing more, and the one that's dropped is Chilwell.
Well, I know how I feel about that, but obviously we'll get into that when we pick our team. So what we're going to do now is we are going to pick our 11, which we believe is the best 11 going forward, and the formation that we think that 11 is best suited to, let's say. And as I say, we are taking into account that some players are injured. So, for example, Reece James isn't going to be in there, and one or two others, and maybe we just give him a shout when we do it to say when he comes back, because, you know, at this point, I would still obviously have Reece James ahead of Malo Gusto. So starting with yourself, Josh, what formation you going with?
I will go 4-2-3-1. I think we're both agreeing, right? And I would, well, let's get into it.
Yeah. Starting off, goalkeeper.
Sorry, wait a second. Are you going 4-2-3-1?
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's clarify that.
Yeah.
Right. So we're in agreement. We're in agreement, right? So 4-2-3-1. Goalkeeper, as you say, I'm going to go with Sanchez. But I think there's been a lot of pressure on him. I think there is going to be a small murmuring that this new goalkeeper, Petrovic, gets a chance.
I've heard a few people say this Petrovic is really good.
Yeah, but that's a good position to be in, isn't it? Yeah. I think the thing is, right, he's got Ben Roberts there. They've obviously brought him in. I think they're going to back him. They've given him the number 1 shirt. I can't see him being dropped immediately. I don't think, tell me what you think about this. I don't think he's had clangers when he's been playing for us. I think the decision against Wimbledon was incredibly harsh, the penalty. He made a mistake against Liverpool that really stuck out to me as being a very bad
West Ham
mistake.
from the corner.
Yeah,
he wasn't great there.
He wasn't great, but I don't think they're clangers.
I don't think he's had clangers.
No.
Do I think that he has elevated us in that position after the departure of Kepa? At this moment in time, no. But at the same time, I'm not saying oh, it's so much worse with him. It's an area that, if you ask me now, with Chelsea potentially being successful going forward, will we have Robert Sanchez there? I would say the jury's out. I'm not saying we won't. I'm not saying we will. He's not done anything for me to go, no way, he's not up to it, whatever. He's also not done anything for me to go, yeah, he's a class goalkeeper. So the jury's out, isn't it?
I've got to back him here, right? Because I think that people are jumping on, and this is what happens when you have a bad loss or a couple of bad losses. People immediately jump on individual players and say whether they're good or not. What we've got to remember with all of these picks that we're going to go through in a second is they're all relatively new to the team. They're all getting used to each other. There's got to be a communication bond. There's almost got to be a team camaraderie bond that's got to happen, right? And so I think we are jumping down Sanchez's throat quite early. I think actually he's looked relatively solid with his feet. I thought he's looked way more commanding in the box than we've seen. And I actually think he's a bit more of a leader than we've seen. I've seen some stuff in the as the guys are walking out, where he's gone, I'm strong, come on boys, let's get up for it. He's been sort of like a more management sort of role, sort of a captain-esque role. So I think we're getting a bit too harsh on him.
Without going into my team just yet, because I'll name mine after, I actually would agree with you that I would stick with Sanchez and goal. I'm not twisting on him or anything. But yeah, I mean, look, time will tell. Time will honestly tell. What about your backline?
Shall we do position by position? Because I think this would be fun. Why don't we do it where we do the same?
So I'm just thinking about the graphic now. One or the other. Yeah. We've both gone with Sanchez.
Yeah.
Who's your right back?
So I'm going to go, for the time being, as we say, Reece James isn't going to be fit for a while. I'm going to go Gusto. I think he's absolutely outperformed. I think he's been brilliant, and I think he deserves a place in the starting 11. Would you agree?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue it at all. Centre-back pairing we'll do each. Let's have yours first.
Okay. This one is really, really difficult. Do you know why? Because Badiashile is coming back, and also Chalobah didn't leave. So this is the one, you were talking about Disasi earlier on. I think Chalobah is the biggest worry for Disasi.
Yeah, I would put Chalobah definitely ahead of Disasi.
There you go.
100%. 100%. It's just a little bit of a head scratcher, the Disasi one for me, because I think we've got really good depth there. And like we were saying, say, for example, you bring him in for 40 odd million, whatever we paid for him. Is he better than Chalobah at this point right now? I don't think so. Does he understand the club better, the culture? We know how important it is to have people that have grown up in the community of Chelsea. So it was a bit of a head scratcher for me. But yeah, so you're centre back to... I'm
going to go Thiago Silva and Cole.
Exact same here. I was shitting myself there for a second. I thought you were going to drop Thiago Silva because he's getting a bit of bad press online and stuff. And it's, again, that's another head scratcher for me. But left back...
Chilwell. This is our team, right? And I'm not predicting Pochettino. If I was predicting Pochettino, I reckon Cole carries on playing at left back. And I think Disasi comes in and we end up playing the same back four that we've had for the last few games. But I think Chilwell is good enough, and I think he's quality to be a left back. And I want to see our wing backs get forward a bit more, basically. So that's why I'm moving to that. Who are you putting?
Yeah, I'd have Chile there too. Definitely.
Can we just have a little notable mention here for Maatsen? He came on the other day, yesterday, and I thought he did incredibly well.
And he played in that left-back role, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He came on, and finally we've seen him at left-back. We've seen him in every other position, I feel, on the pitch other than left-back.
That was one of the surprises for me. I was looking, I was thinking, where's Maatsen even? He's at left-back, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which is mad, because he's a left-back.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to see him there. You know, we've seen him at centre attacking midfield. We've seen him on both sides of the wings. And yeah, he for me is a player. When that news broke, I think Burnley had a bid accepted. I think it was. I was close to heartbroken when that news broke. I thought, no, don't, like, please do not let us do this, you know. So I'm really, really glad, whether it was our intention or not, I'm really, really glad that he stayed. He would be in and around that first team squad for me, but without, you know, a massive spoiler, he's not in my lineup. I would go with Chile too. Which
is harsh, really, because I feel whenever Maatsen has come on, he has looked very, very good. And also he gives something different to Chilwell. So if we're talking about we're playing wingers as wingers and they're hugging the touchline and they're not necessarily inverting and being close to Jackson, is it better to play a Maatsen, for example, who is slightly better at inverting and forming a few more bodies in the middle of midfield? Like, that's basically the move that he was doing yesterday. Like, Maatsen would come on, and rather than being Chilwell, who is very far on the left-hand side, Maatsen would come in and effectively help the midfield. And actually, maybe that's the area that we need to help, rather than putting another body out wing and sort of overloading the wide areas. So, mate, it's going to be easy for us to say Chilwell. Overall, Chilwell is a better player. He's got more experience. He's more advanced. Obviously, he's basically captain now as well, with Reece being out. But I think Maatsen is actually harshly done by.
The midfield pivot, we got two in there. Pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Are we going Enzo and Caicedo?
Yeah, I think we just need to have some defensively minded players there. And Gallagher experiment as a DM, I think, needs to end. That's nothing against him. I think he's played reasonably well, to be fair, and I really like him. We'll get into whether he's in my front four in a second. But yeah, I think Enzo and Caicedo are the ones. And again, look, can we just talk about Caicedo very quickly?
Yep.
I think, again, yesterday people will be saying he's let us down, but I just think overall he needs someone next to him, and I think he's just been isolated. I don't think, again, it's his fault. Same with Jackson.
I don't think it's his fault. What I would counter that with is he does look a bit casual at times to me, a bit nonchalant with, maybe chasing balls down and stuff like that. And the idea of the player I had in my head that we were getting him at times hasn't been exactly how he's looked, but I very much do believe that Caicedo is going to come good. He's going to be a very good player for us. So no problem with him there. Let's go with centre attacking midfield before we go out to the wings.
Yeah.
Who are you having there?
I think based on the performance alone yesterday, I think let's roll the dice and go Palmer.
We haven't disagreed yet, have we?
We're very similar with our picks. We really are.
Again, I'd have Cole Palmer there. I thought he looked good when he came on. I think that he could hold the key. And I say could. I'm not going to put my neck on the line now and say he's going to be the difference maker to us. But I think he could hold the key in solving some of those issues. And when he came on, and those issues I speak about, I mean, the creativity, getting balls into Jackson and whatnot. When he came on, we were chasing the game. They were playing a very, very deep line, and it was backs to the wall defending for Nottingham Forest anyway. So it would always be very, very difficult in that scenario. I do believe that starting from the first minute, which, do you know what? After the international break, I'd very much like to see, It's not like he's the same as Lavia and hasn't had a pre-season, haven't had matches. He was playing for City. He just hadn't really played in the Premier League, but he'd been training to a high level, obviously. So I would stick Cole Palmer straight in there. We know, I'm assuming we're going to have Sterling in there, but what I want to know from you is what side would you put him on? Would you put him on the right or the left? Because it was always fairly commonly known that Sterling was best on the left. But actually, we've seen him on the right recently and to good effect. So would you have him on the right?
No.
You'd have him on the left?
Definitely. I'd put him on the left, yeah. And that goes back to where Chilwell is going to be playing. If we're playing a proper left back, I want Chilwell overlapping. So I think if we're setting up in that way, it makes complete sense to have Sterling as the player that is inverting and going closer to Jackson. And this is the key thing. We've said it in this video. I want someone next to Jackson. Like, Jackson alone cannot hold up the ball, turn and shoot. He can't do that. But what Jackson should be doing is getting the ball, holding it, offloading it to Sterling, and then Sterling can do the shot. Like, that is the way that we need to be playing. And in the 4-2-3-1 system that we're playing, that's the way you've got to set up. So I would be playing him on the left, but I think you're going to be putting him on the right.
I would. And the reason I would put him on the right is because we know the importance that Reece James has to this team. If Reece James is playing yesterday, we probably don't lose that match. I'm not saying we win by 5 goals or something, but we probably don't lose it. The importance that Reece James has to this team, and that is a little partnership that's sort of developing now quite nicely. We've hit a roadblock because obviously Reece is injured. I think Reece really likes having Sterling in front of him. I think that Reece is a very clever player, and I feel like he is better being paired up with a player like Sterling in front of him, who's been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, rather than maybe a Mudryk, a Madueke, someone like that, because I feel like Sterling can add to Reece James's game a lot, and I think they both complement each other. So that's why I'd have him on the right wing. So that's our first, not even personnel, but position we've maybe disagreed on. You'd have Sterling on the left. I'd have him on the right. We've got Cole Palmer in 10. So for your right winger, who you having?
I'm going on Madueke. I think he's been brilliant. Again, Gusto is going to be closer to the centre-backs than Chilwell would be. And so I'm happy for an out-and-out winger on that side. Madueke does things very similar to Sterling. He can beat a man one-on-one. He can whip balls in. He can score goals. So again, I don't mind him being on that side. I know he wants to be cutting in on his left foot. But again, like I'm happy for him to be on that side. And I think that basically complements us. Who would you go for?
Funny enough, I would have... Do you know what? I'd have Noni Madueke on my left-hand side as well. I'd have Noni Madueke in there. I think he's looked good when he's played. I do understand, though, that he does prefer it on the right-hand side, cutting in on his left foot. So it's a little bit of a tricky one. The elephant in the room is the fact that neither of us have named Mykhailo Mudryk in this lineup. Up top, Jackson. Again, like, why are people hating on Jackson? Like, fair enough, he missed a very good opportunity yesterday, but he's been quality all round. And I think there's elements to his game that are raw. He has some touch issues that he hasn't necessarily been able to bring balls under control, and I worry about that a little bit. But overall, he's got pace. He can get in behind. His finishing has been okay so far, obviously barring that miss yesterday. So I just think he is the main man. And I think even when Broja comes back, I see Broja more as a sub, relieving the pressure from Jackson, or in games that we are chasing, like yesterday, bringing him on alongside Jackson. And actually, what I think may end up happening, and this might solve our issue on the wings, I think it might end up being Broja through the middle and Jackson on the left. People have said about the fact that Jackson was a winger earlier on in his career, wasn't he? I'm really excited to see Broja come back. Really, really excited to see him come back. At the minute, I obviously put Jackson ahead of him in the pecking order, but Bro was a player that I was really, really high on when he was in and around that first team, which, albeit most of the time, is coming off the bench. Didn't see him start many games, but yeah, a couple of times, really, really impressed by Broja. So that's our team there. Let's just quickly touch now to finish this video on the positives, because I think that it's very easy to dwell on the negativity that's surrounded the club recently. What I would say is this. One comparison me and you have made off camera is that we're a little bit similar at the minute in terms of how we view where we are in the bigger sort of picture, in the landscape of things, as to where maybe Arsenal were a couple of years ago. A lot of people have said to me it's similar to where Man United were. It's really not. It's really, really not, because Man United's personnel wasn't right. The players they had weren't players that are going to, be able to build and form relationships and progress in their career because of the age profile of a lot of them. They were having games where, like, Mata was playing for him at times and whatever, and I love one Mata, but, at that age, So I would not say we're anything like where Man United were a couple of years ago, especially like under Solskjaer and whatnot. I would more liken us to where Arsenal were when maybe Arteta first came in. But there's one key thing, isn't there? The personnel. Because the players we have are a lot better than those players that Arsenal had at that time.
And they're going to be getting better. Yeah. This is the key thing, right? We've built an incredibly young squad. I looked at it the other day. The average age is 22 and a half for the entire squad, right? And the average age of the signings are 20 and a half. So to say and to expect every single one of those players to hit the ground running, bed in, be elite mentality, be able to compete in the Premier League, which is the hardest league in the world, with teams like Nottingham Forest, who everyone is expecting to be right down at the bottom of the league, and yet they've just signed tens of players in the summer window. that are all quality. You know, they're bringing in players like Ibrahim Sangare, who Arsenal were after, Chelsea were after, City were even looking at. You know, he is like a classic football manager kind of player that everyone wanted, right? And so to have that kind of pressure on your heads, look, imagine us, right, when we were 20 years old, going and playing at Stamford Bridge, when you're meant to come in, score goals, or defend incredibly well, like Disasi, you know, for example. Like, it's just not necessarily fair. And I think the key thing for us Chelsea fans to acknowledge is this: we are in a transition. This season may not go in the way that we want, right? And I'm not saying that's necessarily means that we're going to finish 12th, but I think it might not necessarily mean that we finish in the top 5. And we almost need to acknowledge that that might not necessarily be a failure. What it might indicate is that we're on a transition. Poch is building a squad and a team in his image, and we're also getting potential in the future rather than quality now. It's a classic thing. When you sign the Wonder Kids on Football Manager, and I keep going back to that game because I love it. When you sign them, their potential ability isn't very good. Sorry, their current ability isn't very good, but their potential ability is very high. But what you need to do is allow them to grow and build, and that's what we're going to be seeing, right? So I think we need to temper our expectations slightly, but we also need to back young players. And that comes into people like Mudryk. They need an arm around them. He's getting 15, 20 minutes. You know, we need to give him a chance here. There's no way he can shine. And I actually kind of like that he took a shot from the middle of our half, you know, because at least he's having a go. At least they're trying to create something. So I think with every single one of these players, especially the young players that are coming in, I feel that we just need to get around them and back them.
I think there's huge cause for optimism if you can scratch beneath the surface, which is obviously pretty negative at the minute. We've got good players. We've got a very good manager that we do need to back. I've heard a few people saying about Pochettino out. That's mental. Who would we then get in? Pochettino's the man at the moment to make these lots start to tick, and I do believe he'll do so. But we're going to have to be patient, and we're going to have to accept that, you know, in the sort of mid-90s, right, because people think, oh, Chelsea were only successful from 2004 onwards. That's not right, okay? We were successful from sort of the mid-90s. We were winning cups and whatnot, right? But say early 90s, if someone had have said to you, Chelsea are about to have the greatest 20 years anyone could ask for. However, after that sort of 20-odd years, they might have a couple of seasons where the wheel just stops turning and they have to completely rebuild things. And it might be a shock to the system. It might create headlines. It might make people think, oh my God, what are they doing? But we'll come through it. And there is no guarantee that we'll come through it. But I really, really do believe that we will. So I do want to have a half-full mentality. I don't want to be too rash, and, you know, I hear certain people saying a lot of things about Chelsea, which I just think, mate, what are you going on about? You know, what are you going to do? Go and support another team? Like, we got to keep a steady head, I believe. And I think there's massive cause for optimism. I do think we'll do well. I think that if we finish this season in 7th, we're going to be disappointed, aren't we? But then if you said to someone who doesn't have an allegiance with a club and is able to separate themselves from you know, their love for the club, if you said, right, 12th to 7th is pretty good. It is pretty good. And then we can build on from there. We look at Arsenal finishing 2nd last year and the season before finishing 5th, the season before that finishing 8th. And I just think we have to be a little bit patient, drown out the massive amount of negativity about you've spent $1 billion. It is what it is. But sit tight. I think we'll do all right. I'd very much always like to know your lot's thoughts. Were you in attendance for the game yesterday? What did you think? And where do you see this current Chelsea side at the moment? Do you think that we will come good, or do you think that we're in a massive decline, as some people have said? I personally don't believe we are. One person I know also doesn't believe we are is Josh, whose channel is linked in the description for this video. So please, if you're not already, and a lot of you are, but if you're not, head over there, drop him a subscribe. He's banging out a lot of really, really good content at the moment that I know you lot will love. So make sure you are there in the right place at the right time for that. And also, if you're not subscribed to my channel, you need to subscribe, hit the bell so that you get a notification every time one of my videos goes live, and I will see you all in the next one.